The elevator descended to a floor that didn't exist. Marcus watched the numbers flicker past the lobby B1, B2, B3 before the digital display went dark completely. The metal box continued its impossible journey downward, creaking and groaning like an ancient beast awakening from centuries of slumber. Outside the doors, he could hear something that made his blood turn to ice, children laughing in the walls. But there were no children at the Stanley Hotel that night. He'd checked in alone, and the winter storm had driven away every other guest except for the skeletal night staff. The concierge had mentioned this with an apologetic smile, explaining how the historic Colorado Hotel often became a ghost town during February blizzards. What he hadn't mentioned was how the building itself seemed to breathe when empty, how shadows moved independently of their sources, or how the elevator had a mind of its own. The laughter grew louder, echoing through the shaft like a chorus of voices that hadn't aged in decades. Marcus pressed every button on the panel 123 lobby, but nothing responded. The elevator kept dropping into depths that the hotel's blueprints insisted couldn't exist. Welcome back to our channel, fellow fear seekers. Tonight's story comes from the heart of Colorado's most notorious haunted hotel, where one guest discovered that some rooms are never meant to be booked. Before we dive into this bone-chilling tale, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Are you brave enough to listen with the lights off? Don't forget to hit that like button if this story sends shivers down your spine, and subscribe for more real horror experiences that'll keep you up at night. Because what happened to Marcus Chen during his 3-day stay at the Stanley Hotel will make you question everything you thought you knew about the paranormal. Marcus Chen had always been a skeptic. As a travel blogger with over 500,000 subscribers, he'd built his reputation on debunking paranormal tourism scams across America. The Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado, famous for inspiring Stephen King's The Shining, was just another stop on his Haunted Hotels Exposed series. He'd booked a 3-day stay during the off-season, specifically choosing the notorious Room 217, where King himself had stayed. The drive up to the hotel on that February evening should have been his first warning. The GPS had malfunctioned twice, leading him down unmarked mountain roads that seemed to spiral in directions that defied the landscape. When he'd finally arrived, the imposing Georgian colonial structure loomed against the storm clouds like something from a Gothic nightmare. Its white facade gleamed unnaturally bright in the twilight, as if the building itself was phosphorescent. The check-in process had been strangely smooth. The young woman behind the desk, her name tag read Sarah, had an unusually pale complexion and kept glancing toward the grand staircase as if expecting someone. When Marcus mentioned he was there to investigate the paranormal claims, her smile faltered for just a moment. "Most of our ghost tour guests come during the summer," she'd said, sliding his keycard across the marble counter. "You might find the experience more intense during winter months." Marcus had laughed it off, pocketing the keycard to room 217. "That's exactly what I'm hoping for. The more dramatic, the better content it makes." Sarah's eyes had lingered on him with something that looked suspiciously like pity. "Well, you certainly picked the right time. The hotel has been particularly active lately." The word active hung in the air like a challenge. Marcus had heard it all before: mysterious footsteps, cold spots, doors slamming on their own. Every allegedly haunted location had the same tired repertoire of supernatural phenomena. He documented dozens of these places, always finding logical explanations: old buildings settling, drafty windows, overactive imaginations fueled by suggestion and local legends. His room on the second floor was spacious and well-appointed, with antique furniture and a view of the snow-covered mountains. The heating worked perfectly, the Wi-Fi was strong, and the bathroom fixtures were modern despite the historic ambiance. Everything seemed perfectly normal, which was exactly what he'd expected. But as Marcus unpacked his equipment, cameras, audio recorders, EMF detectors, he noticed something odd. The room felt larger at night. Not just darker, but physically expanded, as if the walls had somehow moved outward when he wasn't looking. He attributed it to the unfamiliar surroundings and the way shadows could distort perspective. The first night passed without incident, though Marcus's sleep was restless. He kept waking to the sound of footsteps in the hallway, slow, deliberate pacing that would start around midnight and continue until dawn. When he checked the corridor, it was always empty. Hotel staff doing their rounds, he'd assumed, though their timing seemed oddly consistent. It wasn't until the second evening, when he'd pressed the elevator button to return to his room after dinner, that Marcus realized his skeptical worldview was about to be thoroughly challenged. The elevator arrived with a soft ding that sounded perfectly normal. Marcus stepped inside, pressed the button for the second floor, and checked his phone for messages. The doors slid shut with their usual pneumatic whisper, and he felt the familiar lurch as the mechanism engaged. But instead of rising, the elevator began to descend. At first, Marcus thought it was a simple mechanical error. He pressed the 2 button again, then the lobby button. Nothing. The floor indicator showed B1, then B2, then B3. He'd studied the hotel's layout extensively for his article. The Stanley only had 4 floors above ground and 1 basement level used for storage and utilities. "Excuse me," he called out, assuming there was an intercom system. "The elevator seems to be malfunctioning." Silence. The elevator continued its impossible descent. B4, B5. The numbers kept climbing downward while Marcus's stomach dropped. He pulled out his phone to call the front desk, but the signal had vanished completely. The screen showed no service in areas where he'd had perfect reception moments before. That's when he heard the children laughing. It started as a faint giggle from somewhere beyond the elevator doors, as if a group of kids were playing a game in the shaft. But children don't play in elevator shafts. Children don't play anywhere at the Stanley Hotel in February during a blizzard that had driven away every family guest. The laughter grew more distinct. Multiple voices, different ages, all expressing a joy that felt somehow wrong in this context. One child's voice stood out from the rest. A little girl who seemed to be singing a nursery rhyme, "Ring around the rosy pocket full of posies." Marcus pressed the emergency button repeatedly. Nothing. He pounded on the doors shouting for help, but his voice seemed to be absorbed by the metal walls rather than echoing through the shaft. The elevator's fluorescent lights flickered, casting his reflection in stuttering fragments across the polished doors. B8, B9, B10. "This is impossible," he whispered. But his voice cracked with the first real fear he'd felt in years. The elevator was descending through solid rock now, through the mountain itself. He could hear something scraping against the shaft walls, not mechanical but organic, like fingernails dragging across stone. The singing continued. "Ashes, ashes, we all fall down." Then, abruptly, the elevator stopped. The floor indicator went dark, showing no number at all. The silence was absolute, except for his own ragged breathing and the rapid hammering of his heart. For a moment, Marcus allowed himself to hope that the nightmare was over, that the doors would open onto the familiar hotel lobby, and he could laugh about the malfunction with the front desk staff. Instead, the lights went out completely. In the absolute darkness, Marcus heard something that made his rational mind simply refuse to process the information. The elevator doors were opening, but instead of the mechanical rumble he expected, they moved with the wet sliding sound of something alive. Air rushed in from beyond, not the recycled hotel atmosphere he knew, but something ancient and stale, carrying odors of damp earth and decay. And in that fetid breeze he heard a voice. Not a child this time, but a woman speaking in a tone of terrible authority. "Welcome to the real Stanley Hotel, Mr. Chen. We've been waiting for you to visit us properly." The woman stepped into the elevator. In the darkness, Marcus couldn't see her clearly, but he could sense her presence, tall, imposing, and radiating a coldness that had nothing to do with temperature. Her dress rustled with each movement, the fabric sounding like autumn leaves or old paper crumbling. "I don't understand," Marcus stammered. "What's happening here? You came to expose our secrets," the woman said, and her voice carried the weight of decades. "But some secrets are meant to remain hidden. Some stories are too dangerous for your little internet show." The elevator lurched again, not moving up or down, but sideways, as if the shaft had somehow reconfigured itself. Marcus felt the floor tilting beneath his feet, and he pressed his back against the wall for support. "You see, Mr. Chen," the woman continued, "the Stanley Hotel, you know, the one with its ghost tours and gift shops and happy tourists, that's just the surface. The real hotel exists in the spaces between, in the rooms that were never built but have always been here. And once you found your way down here, leaving becomes complicated." When the elevator finally stopped moving, the doors opened onto a hallway that shouldn't have existed. Emergency lighting cast a sickly yellow glow over wallpaper that was simultaneously familiar and wrong, the same pattern as the upper floors, but faded and peeling as if it had been aging and fast-forward for decades. "Room 217 is down the hall," the woman said, her voice now coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Your real room, the one that's been waiting for you." Marcus stumbled out of the elevator on unsteady legs. The hallway stretched impossibly long in both directions, lined with doors that bore room numbers he'd never seen: 217B, 217C, 217-1A. Some doors stood ajar, revealing glimpses of rooms that defied physics, spaces that seemed to expand beyond their boundaries, filled with furniture from different eras, all occupying the same impossible geometry. Behind him, the elevator doors slid shut with finality. When he turned to look, the elevator was gone. In its place was solid wall, as if it had never existed at all. "This isn't real," Marcus said aloud, but his words sounded hollow even to himself. He pulled out his phone again, still no signal, but now the screen itself was behaving strangely. The time kept changing randomly: 11:47 p.m., 3:22 a.m., 6:15 p.m., 2:09 a.m. The date shifted too, cycling through years both past and future. He began walking down the hallway, his footsteps muffled by carpeting that squelched underfoot like something organic. The walls seemed to breathe around him, expanding and contracting with a rhythm that matched no human heartbeat. Portrait paintings lined the corridor, formal Victorian-era photographs of hotel guests and staff. But the subject's eyes followed his movement, and their expressions changed when he wasn't looking directly at them. In one photograph, a family of 4 stood formally posed in front of the hotel's grand staircase. But as Marcus watched, the little girl in the photo raised her hand and waved at him. Her mouth moved silently, forming words he couldn't hear but somehow understood. "Come play with us." Room 217B drew his attention because it was the only door that was completely closed. A brass nameplate read "Mr. Chen" in elegant script that looked like it had been there for decades. The key in his pocket, the one Sarah had given him upstairs in the real hotel, felt warm against his fingers. "Don't," whispered a voice behind him. Marcus spun around to find a young man in a bellhop uniform that looked decades out of date. The boy couldn't have been more than 16, with pale skin and eyes that held far too much knowledge for someone his age. "You don't want to open that door," the bellhop continued. "Not yet. You're not ready for what's inside." "What do you mean? Who are you?" "I'm Tommy. I worked here in 1959. Still do, I suppose." The boy's smile was sad, but not unkind. "Been trying to warn people like you for 60 years. The hotel chooses certain visitors, you see. Writers, investigators, people who think they can handle the truth. But the truth here isn't something you handle, it's something that handles you." Marcus backed away from the door, his hand still clutching the key. "This is all psychological. Some kind of elaborate prank or hidden camera show. The hotel management is trying to create viral marketing." Tommy shook his head. "Is that what you think, even after riding an elevator through solid rock? Even after seeing photographs move and speaking to someone who died before you were born?" He gestured down the hallway. "Look around, Mr. Chen. Use that investigative mind you're so proud of. What do you really see?" For the first time since entering this impossible place, Marcus forced himself to truly observe his surroundings. The wallpaper wasn't just peeling, it was shifting, showing different patterns depending on the angle of view. One moment it displayed roses and vines, the next geometric Art Deco designs, then children's drawings that seemed to move and change like living things. The doors along the hallway weren't consistent either. Some were modern hotel room entrances, others looked like they belonged to Victorian mansions, and still others appeared to be carved from single pieces of dark wood with symbols that hurt to look at directly. The numbers changed as he watched: 218, 219, 220, then suddenly 1019, 2847. "The Stanley Hotel exists in layers," Tommy explained, walking beside him now. "What tourists see is just the newest layer built over and around and through all the previous versions. Hotels have been on this land for over a century, Mr. Chen. Each one built on the bones of the last, each one adding new rooms and new stories to the structure. But buildings remember, and when they remember long enough, they start to dream." They passed a window, and Marcus looked out expecting to see the familiar Colorado mountains. Instead, he saw the hotel as it existed in different time periods simultaneously, a flickering overlay of architectural styles, gardens that bloomed and withered in seconds, and guests from different eras walking the same grounds at the same time without seeing each other. In 1943, a fire killed 12 guests. Tommy continued his guided tour through Nightmare. In 1967, a gas leak took out half the third floor. In 1988, a family of 5 disappeared during a Christmas snowstorm and were never found. But they're all still here, Mr. Chen, still checking in, still trying to check out, still living their final moments over and over again. They stopped in front of another room, 217D, where the door stood open. Inside, Marcus could see a 1940s family having dinner, completely unaware that flames were beginning to lick at the walls behind them. The father was telling a joke, the mother was laughing, and the children were arguing over who got the last dinner roll. None of them noticed that their skin was starting to blacken and peel. "Why are you showing me this?" Marcus whispered. "Because you need to understand what you're dealing with before you open your door," Tommy replied. "The hotel doesn't just collect guests, it collects their stories. Every tragedy, every moment of terror, every last breath gets woven into the structure itself. And some stories are so powerful, they start to rewrite reality around them." A new sound echoed through the hallway, the distant tick of a grandfather clock. But the rhythm was wrong. Instead of marking seconds, it seemed to be counting down to something. With each tick, the temperature dropped a degree and the lights flickered more violently. "He's coming," Tommy said, and for the first time, real fear entered his voice. "The night manager. He makes his rounds every evening, checking on the special guests. You need to decide, Mr. Chen, open your door and face what's inside. Or try to run and face him instead." "What's in my room?" "Your story," Tommy said simply. "The one you were always meant to tell. The one that will either set you free or trap you here forever with the rest of us." The ticking grew louder, and somewhere in the distance, Marcus could hear the measured footsteps of someone approaching. Someone who walked with the authority of ownership and the patience of eternity. The footsteps were getting closer, accompanied by the soft jingle of keys and the scratch of something being dragged across the carpet. Marcus's hand trembled as he inserted the key into room 217B's lock. The mechanism turned with surprising ease, as if it had been waiting for this moment. "Whatever you see in there," Tommy whispered urgently, "remember that it's showing you the truth. Not the truth you want to find, but the truth that's always been waiting for you." Marcus pushed open the door. The room was his apartment in Denver. Exactly his apartment, down to the coffee mug he'd left unwashed in the sink that morning and the stack of rejection letters from publishers on his desk. But this version felt like a mock-up, a stage set built by someone who had observed his life from the outside. The proportions were slightly wrong, the colors too saturated, and his reflection in the mirror moved a fraction of a second behind his actual movements. Sitting at his desk, typing on his laptop, was another version of himself. "Finally," the other Marcus said without looking up from the screen. "I was wondering when you'd get here." Marcus stepped into the room cautiously. The door swung shut behind him with a soft click, but he was too transfixed by the scene before him to notice. His doppelganger looked exactly like him, but carried an air of confidence he'd never possessed. This Marcus's shoulders weren't hunched from years of self-doubt. His eyes weren't bloodshot from late nights spent writing articles that barely paid the bills, and his smile held genuine satisfaction instead of the desperate hope for validation that had driven him for so long. "Who are you?" Marcus asked, though he already suspected the answer. "I'm who you could have been," the other Marcus replied, finally turning around in the chair. "The writer you've always claimed you wanted to be. The one who doesn't need to debunk ghost stories for YouTube views because he's busy writing real stories that matter." On the laptop screen, Marcus could see the manuscript his double had been working on. It wasn't another exposé of paranormal tourism. It was a novel rich and complex, the kind of literary work he'd dreamed of creating since college, but had never found the courage to attempt. "This isn't possible," Marcus said, but the words felt automatic now, a reflexive denial that held no real conviction. "Of course it's possible. It's happening." The other Marcus gestured around the room. "This is what your life looks like when you stop running from your potential and embrace what you're actually good at. when you stop hiding behind skepticism because you're afraid of believing in something and being disappointed. The room began to shift around them. The walls expanded to reveal a larger apartment, no a house. A beautiful house with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined with published novels bearing his name. Awards sat on the mantelpiece, literary prizes, recognition from institutions he'd always dreamed of being accepted by. You see, Marcus, the Stanley Hotel doesn't just trap people, sometimes it saves them. It shows them the paths they never took, the choices they never made, the person they never allowed themselves to become. Through the window, Marcus could see a different life playing out like a film himself, at book signings, being interviewed on television, teaching creative writing to eager students living with purpose instead of desperation. "But I'm a journalist," Marcus protested weakly. "I investigate things. I expose lies." "You're hiding," the other Marcus countered. "You investigate other people's fantasies because you're too scared to pursue your own. You debunk ghost stories because you're afraid of believing in magic and being disappointed when it doesn't save you." A new voice cut through their conversation, deep, authoritative, and infinitely patient. "Fascinating conversation, but it's time for the evening's rounds." The night manager stood in the doorway. He was tall and gaunt, wearing a perfectly pressed hotel uniform that belonged to no particular era. His face was ageless in the way that rocks are ageless, carved by time into something that had once been human, but was now something more enduring and terrible. "Mr. Chen," the night manager said with a smile that revealed teeth like yellowed ivory keys. "Welcome to your permanent accommodation. I trust you're finding everything to your satisfaction." "I want to leave," Marcus said, surprised by the steadiness of his own voice. "Of course you do. All our guests say that initially." The night manager consulted a ledger that appeared in his hands. "But according to our records, you checked in for a 3-day stay. And here at the Stanley Hotel, we honor our reservations completely." The other Marcus stood up from the desk, and Marcus realized with growing horror that his doppelganger was becoming more solid, more real, while he felt himself becoming increasingly translucent. "You see," the night manager explained conversationally, "the hotel sometimes offers our special guests a choice. You can remain as you are, a mediocre skeptic, slowly fading into irrelevance, or you can become who you were meant to be. The transformation requires a small sacrifice, of course." "What kind of sacrifice?" "Your certainty," the night manager said simply. "Your need to explain everything away. Your fear of believing in something larger than yourself. In exchange, you get to become the writer you've always pretended you didn't want to be." The room around them was becoming more vivid, more real, while the hallway behind the night manager faded into shadow. Marcus could feel himself being drawn into this better life, this version of himself that had made different choices and found success. "But if I stay," Marcus realized, "I become trapped here forever." "Trapped?" The night manager laughed, a sound like wind chimes made of bone. "Mr. Chen, you've been trapped your entire life, trapped by fear, by cynicism, by the desperate need to prove that wonder doesn't exist. Here, you can finally be free." The other Marcus extended his hand. "Come on, take the leap. For once in your life, believe in something impossible." Marcus reached out his fingers, almost touching those of his better self. In that moment, he could feel the weight of possibilities, the life he could have if he just surrendered to the hotel's offer. But something Tommy had said echoed in his mind. Some stories are too dangerous for your little internet show. And Marcus realized the truth. This wasn't about becoming a better writer. This was about becoming another story for the hotel, to tell another tragedy to add to its collection. The night manager wasn't offering him freedom. He was offering him a beautiful cage. "No," Marcus said, pulling his hand back. "I won't trade my life for a fantasy." The night manager's smile faltered for the first time. "I beg your pardon. You're not offering me a better life, you're offering me a better death. A prettier way to disappear forever." Marcus looked around the beautiful room that was already beginning to fade at the edges. "This isn't real transformation. It's just another form of giving up." The other Marcus's face twisted with disappointment and rage. "You fool, do you have any idea what you're rejecting? Do you know how rare this opportunity is?" "I know exactly what I'm rejecting," Marcus said, backing toward the door. I'm rejecting the easy way out, the magical solution that doesn't require me to actually change or grow, or do the hard work of becoming better. The night manager stepped forward, his patient demeanor cracking to reveal something ancient and hungry underneath. Mr. Chen, you misunderstand your situation. This isn't a negotiation. You've entered the deeper levels of the hotel. Leaving requires management approval. Then I'll find another way out. Marcus lunged for the door, but it slammed shut before he could reach it. The beautiful apartment began to decay around them, the books on the shelves turning to ash, the awards melting like wax, the windows showing not a better life, but an endless void. There is no other way, the night manager said, his voice now carrying the weight of geological ages. The hotel claims what it needs to survive. Your skepticism has been feeding us for days. Every doubt, every dismissal, every moment of fear you've tried to rationalize away. You've been delicious, Mr. Chen. But as the room continued to collapse around them, Marcus noticed something the night manager hadn't seen. His phone was working again. Not the normal functions, he still had no signal, but his recording app was running. It had been running the entire time, documenting everything. You know what, Marcus said, pulling out the phone. You're right about one thing. I have been hiding behind skepticism, but not from magic, from truth. And the truth is, I don't need to understand something to report on it. He held up the phone, showing the recording app that had been capturing hours of impossible audio. I came here to debunk a ghost story, but instead I found a real one. And maybe that's exactly the story I was meant to tell. The night manager lunged forward with inhuman speed, but Marcus was already moving. He threw himself against the window, which shattered not into glass, but into fragments of compressed time and space. As he fell through the kaleidoscope of broken realities, he heard the night manager's roar of frustration echoing through dimensions. Marcus tumbled through layers of the hotel's existence, past the burned family still having their eternal dinner, past the gas leak victims choking on poison air, past Tommy waving goodbye with a sad but proud smile. He fell through decades of accumulated tragedies until finally, blessedly, he crashed onto the marble floor of the real hotel lobby. The grandfather clock in the corner chimed 3 a.m. Marcus was alone, soaked in sweat, clutching his phone, which showed a recording file labeled Stanley Hotel Investigation, 4 hours 37 minutes. Sarah was still behind the front desk, but she looked different now, older, more tired, and completely unsurprised to see him sprawled on the floor in his pajamas. "Checking out early, Mr. Chen?" she asked. Marcus gathered his things from room 217 with trembling hands. Everything was exactly as he'd left it. His equipment neatly arranged, his clothes folded in the suitcase, his laptop charged and ready. But when he checked the recordings from his official investigation equipment, they showed nothing but static and his own voice commenting on perfectly normal hotel sounds. Only his phone contained proof of what had happened in the depths of the Stanley Hotel. As he loaded his car in the pre-dawn darkness, Sarah appeared beside him with a cup of steaming coffee. "Most people don't remember," she said quietly. "The hotel usually ensures that guests forget the deeper experiences, but sometimes with certain visitors it wants the stories to be told." "Who are you really?" Marcus asked. "I'm Sarah Chen," she said, and Marcus's blood turned to ice. "I was a travel writer just like you. I came here in 1987 to investigate the paranormal claims." Marcus stared at her, understanding flooding through him like cold water. "Chen, we're related. Your great aunt. I was 26 when I checked in. I've been 26 ever since." She smiled sadly. "The hotel let me keep working the desk greeting family members when they inevitably find their way here. We Chens have always been drawn to stories, Marcus. It runs in the blood. Why didn't it keep me? Because you chose differently than I did. When the night manager offered me the chance to become the writer I always dreamed of being, I took it. I thought I was choosing courage, but I was really choosing comfort. You chose the harder path, staying imperfect and human, and uncertain." Marcus fumbled for his keys, desperate to leave before the hotel changed its mind about releasing him. "What happens to you now?" "I keep working. I keep waiting. And maybe someday another Chen will find their way down to the deeper floors and make a different choice than both of us." She handed him a business card. "But I don't think that will be necessary anymore." Marcus looked at the card. It was his own business card, but the title read Marcus Chen, Paranormal Investigative Journalist, instead of his usual travel and lifestyle writer. The hotel doesn't just take stories, Marcus. Sometimes it gives them too. You have a choice now: pretend this never happened and go back to your old life, or embrace the fact that you've genuinely experienced something impossible. As Marcus drove away from the Stanley Hotel, watching it disappear in his rearview mirror, he realized that for the first time in his career, he had a story he couldn't debunk. A story that would require readers to simply trust him, to believe in something they couldn't verify or understand. 6 months later, his article, "There's Something Seriously Wrong with the Stanley Hotel," went viral. It was shared millions of times, spawned countless podcast discussions, and launched his career as a serious paranormal investigator. But more importantly, it was a true story. Messy, impossible to prove, and absolutely real. Marcus still has the recording from that night. He's played it for skeptics and believers alike, and it never fails to divide the room between those who hear only static and those who hear the voices of the hotel's permanent residents. He's learned to be okay with that division, to accept that some truths aren't meant for everyone. But sometimes late at night, when he's writing in his Denver apartment, which looks nothing like the perfect version he saw in room 217B, his phone will buzz with a text from an unknown number. "New guest checking in tomorrow. Room 217. Thought you should know. S." And Marcus knows that somewhere in the Colorado mountains, the Stanley Hotel is still collecting stories, still offering impossible choices to writers who think they're brave enough to handle the truth. The last text he received was 3 days ago. "Family reunion coming up. Pack for 3 nights. The night manager is planning something special. Aunt Sarah." Marcus stares at that message every night before bed, wondering if this time he'll be strong enough to ignore it, or if the pull of family and unfinished business will draw him back to the hotel that exists in the spaces between certainty and faith. Because there's something seriously wrong with the Stanley Hotel. And it's not done with the Chen family yet.